You know, there are moments in life when you realize that the people you love the most can sometimes be the ones who hurt you the deepest. This is a story about family, betrayal, and a lesson that needed to be taught the hard way. My name is Margaret, and for the past 40 years, I've owned a beautiful lakefront cottage up in Pine Valley. It's not just a property to me. It's where my late husband Thomas and I spent our summers, where we raised our daughter Emily, where we celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, where we watched sunsets that took our breath away. After Thomas passed away 5 years ago, that cottage became even more precious. It was my sanctuary, my escape from the noise of the city. Every weekend, I'd drive up there, sit on the porch with my coffee, and feel close to him again. I'm 68 years old now, and I've worked hard my entire life. I was a school teacher for 35 years, and Thomas was an engineer. We saved every penny we could to buy that cottage. It wasn't handed to us. We earned it. Now, I have one daughter, Emily, and she has a son named Derek. Derek is 27 years old, and honestly, he's always been a bit entitled. Emily and her husband spoiled him growing up. Everything was given to him on a silver platter. He never had to work for anything. But I loved him. He was my only grandchild. And despite his flaws, I always believed there was good in him. I always believed he'd eventually mature and understand the value of hard work and respect. Boy, was I wrong. It was a Thursday afternoon when Derek showed up at my house unannounced. I was in my garden, tending to my roses, when I heard his car pull into the driveway. He got out wearing designer sunglasses and expensive sneakers that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. "Hey, Grandma," he called out with that bright smile of his. "Derek, sweetheart, what a surprise." I wiped my hands on my apron and gave him a hug. "What brings you here?" "Can't I just visit my favorite grandmother?" he said with a laugh. I should have known right then that something was up. Derek never visited without a reason. We went inside, and I made us some iced tea. We sat in the living room, and he started asking me all sorts of questions about how I was doing, about my health, about the cottage. At first, it seemed like genuine concern. But then the conversation took a turn. "So, Grandma," he said, leaning forward with his hands clasped together, "I've been thinking a lot about your cottage." "Oh," I said, sipping my tea. "What about it?" "Well, you're not getting any younger," he said, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "And it's such a beautiful property. It seems like a waste for it to just sit there empty most of the time." I felt a knot forming in my stomach. "It's not empty, Derek. I go there almost every weekend." "Yeah, but think about it," he continued, his voice getting more animated. "That cottage could be making you money. Have you ever thought about turning it into an Airbnb?" I set my glass down carefully. "An Airbnb? Derek, that's my home. That's where your grandfather and I—" I know," he interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "But Grandma, be practical. You could be earning thousands of dollars a month. And here's the best part. I could manage it for you." There it was, the real reason for his visit. "You want to manage my cottage as an Airbnb?" I asked slowly. "Exactly," he said, his eyes lighting up. "Look, I've done all the research. Properties like yours in that area are renting for $300 to $500 a night. During peak season, you could easily make $15,000 to $20,000 a month." I sat there in silence, processing what he was saying. He wasn't asking to help me. He was asking to take over my property for his own benefit. "And what would you get out of this?" I asked. "Well, obviously, I'd take a management fee," he said casually. "Nothing crazy. Just 30% of the profits. That's standard in the industry. 30% of my property for him to manage." "Derek," I said carefully, I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm not interested in turning my cottage into an Airbnb. That place has too many memories. It's not about money for me. His smile faded. Grandma, you're being sentimental. This is a business opportunity. It's my property, I said, my voice firm, and I've made my decision. He stood up, his jaw tight. Fine, but you're making a mistake. That cottage is just going to waste. He left without even finishing his tea. And as I watched him drive away, I had a sinking feeling that this wasn't over. I had no idea just how right I was. The next few weeks were absolutely unbearable. Derek didn't give up. In fact, he launched what I can only describe as a full-scale family pressure campaign. First, it was the phone calls. He'd call me every other day with new ideas and updated projections. He'd send me links to articles about how Airbnb was the future of real estate investment. He even created a full presentation, complete with charts and graphs, showing how much money I could supposedly make. But when I continued to say no, things got worse. My daughter Emily called me one evening. "Mom, Derek told me about his Airbnb idea." "Emily, I already told him no," I said, exhausted. "But Mom, why? He's really excited about this. It could be a great opportunity for him to prove himself." "Prove himself with my property?" I asked, incredulous. "Emily, that cottage is not a business experiment for Derek. It's my home." "You're being stubborn," she said with a sigh. "Derek says you barely use it anymore." "I use it every weekend," I protested. "Mom, you're not getting any younger. What if something happens to you? Wouldn't it be better to have Derek managing it now, so he knows what to do when, when you're gone?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own daughter was essentially telling me to hand over my property because I might die soon. "Emily, I'm 68, not 98, I said, my voice shaking. "And I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions about my property." "Fine," she said coldly. "But don't come crying to me when you're struggling financially and realize you missed this opportunity." She hung up on me. Over the next 2 weeks, other family members started calling too. Derek's father, Emily's husband Mark, called to talk some sense into me. My sister called saying Derek had told her I was being difficult. Even my cousin Barbara called, telling me I should think about Derek's future. It was like they had all been recruited into Derek's army and I was the enemy. But the final straw came when Derek showed up at my house again. This time, he didn't come alone. He brought Emily and Mark with him. They sat in my living room, all three of them, and it felt like an intervention. "Grandma," Derek started, his tone more serious this time, "we need to talk about the cottage. I've been patient, but this is getting ridiculous." "Excuse me?" I said, my voice sharp. "Mom," Emily chimed in, "we're all worried about you. You're alone. You're isolated in that cottage. What if something happens?" "Nothing is going to happen," I said firmly. "But what if it does?" Mark added. "What if you fall or have a medical emergency? That cottage is in the middle of nowhere." Derek leaned forward. "Look, Grandma, I'm willing to make this really easy for you. I'll handle everything. The cleaning, the bookings, the maintenance. All you have to do is sign over temporary management rights to me." "Temporary management rights?" I repeated slowly. "Just a legal document that gives me the authority to manage the property as an Airbnb," he explained. "You'll still own it. I'll just be running it." I looked at the three of them, and suddenly everything became crystal clear. This wasn't about helping me. This wasn't about my well-being. This was about them getting control of my property. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" Emily looked shocked. "I said, get out of my house, all of you." Derek's face turned red. "Grandma, you're being unreasonable." "Unreasonable?" I stood up, my hands trembling with anger. "You come into my home." Pressure me about my property and have the audacity to call me unreasonable? Get out, now. They left, but not before Derek turned around at the door and said something that chilled me to the bone. Fine, Grandma, but you're going to regret this. That cottage should be mine, and one way or another, I'm going to get it. The way he said it, it wasn't a threat exactly, but it was a promise. A dark promise. And that's when I knew I needed to prepare myself for whatever was coming next. Because Derek wasn't going to stop, and I needed to protect what was mine. 2 weeks passed, and I didn't hear from Derek, Emily, or Mark. The silence was almost eerie. Part of me hoped they had finally accepted my decision and moved on. But deep down, I knew better. I decided to drive up to the cottage that Friday. I needed to clear my head, to be in the place that brought me peace. The drive usually took about 2 hours, and I always looked forward to it. The way the city slowly gave way to forests, the way the air became fresher, the way my shoulders would relax as soon as I saw the lake. But when I pulled into my driveway that afternoon, something felt wrong. The grass looked trampled. There were tire marks on the gravel that weren't there before. And when I got closer to the cottage, I noticed something that made my heart stop. The lock on my front door had been changed. I stood there, key in hand, staring at the new lock in disbelief. I tried my key anyway, knowing it wouldn't work, and it didn't. Someone had changed the locks to my cottage. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and called a locksmith. While I waited, I walked around the property. The windows were closed, curtains drawn. I peered through a gap in one of the windows and saw that furniture had been moved around. There were new decorations on the walls, modern art prints that I had never bought. When the locksmith finally arrived, he managed to get me in. The moment I stepped inside, I felt like I was in someone else's home. Everything was different. The cozy, lived-in feeling of my cottage was gone. In its place was something that looked like a magazine spread. The personal photos of Thomas and me, removed. My grandmother's quilt that always sat on the couch, gone. My books, my decorations, my memories, all cleared away. In their place were generic beach-themed decorations, a fancy coffee machine, a basket of travel-sized toiletries, and a laminated list of house rules sitting on the kitchen counter. I picked up the list with trembling hands and read, "Welcome to Pine Valley Lakefront Retreat, managed by Derek Morrison Properties. Check-in, 3 p.m. Check-out, 11 a.m. No parties, no smoking, no pets. Enjoy your stay, Derek Morrison Properties." He had actually done it. He had taken over my cottage and turned it into an Airbnb without my permission. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, that I actually had to sit down on the couch, this couch that wasn't even mine anymore, just to process what was happening. I called Derek immediately. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, Grandma," he said, his voice cheerful. Too cheerful. "What have you done?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" "Derek, I'm at the cottage right now. You changed the locks. You removed all my things. You've turned it into an Airbnb." There was a pause. Then he said, "Oh, yeah. I was going to tell you about that." "You were going to tell me?" I was shaking with rage. "Derek, this is my property. You had no right." "Actually, Grandma, legally speaking, I did have the right," he said calmly. "Mom gave me power of attorney to handle your affairs." "What?" The room started spinning. "Yeah, she was worried about your mental state. You've been forgetful lately, making poor decisions. So she signed some documents, giving her power of attorney, and she delegated some of those powers to me, including the right to manage your properties." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Derek, I am perfectly sound of mind, and your mother has no such authority." "Well, the documents say otherwise," he replied smugly. "Look, Grandma, I'm actually doing you a favor. The cottage already has bookings for the next 3 months. You're going to make a lot of money. I don't want your money. I want my home back. It's too late for that, he said. The listings are live. People have paid deposits. If you try to cancel now, you'll be on the hook for thousands of dollars in refunds and penalties. Derek, look, I have to go. I have a call with some potential guests. But don't worry, I'll send you your share of the profits, minus my management fee and expenses, of course. He hung up. I sat there in that unfamiliar version of my cottage, surrounded by strangers' decorations, and I cried. I cried for my home, for my memories, for the family I thought I had. But then, something shifted inside me. The sadness turned to anger. The anger turned to determination. Derek thought he had won. He thought he had outsmarted me. He thought I was just a helpless old woman who would accept this betrayal and move on. He was wrong. I dried my eyes, stood up, and looked around. If Derek wanted to play games, I would play too. But I would play to win. And I already had an idea forming in my mind, a surprise that would teach Derek a lesson he'd never forget. The first thing I did was call my lawyer, Richard Patterson. Richard had been handling legal matters for Thomas and me for over 20 years. If anyone could help me navigate this nightmare, it was him. I met with him first thing Monday morning. I brought all my property documents, my will, and everything related to the cottage. "Margaret," Richard said after reviewing everything, "I need to be clear with you. Do you have any memory of signing power of attorney documents to Emily?" "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "I would never do that without discussing it with you first." He nodded slowly. "Then we have a problem. Because if Derek is claiming such authority exists, we need to see those documents. And if they're forged, that's fraud. That's criminal. So what do? First, we send a cease and desist letter to Derek, demanding he immediately stop using your property and return all keys. Second, we request copies of any power of attorney documents he's claiming to have. Third, if he doesn't comply, we file for an emergency injunction and potentially pursue criminal charges. "How long will this take?" I asked. "The legal process? Could be weeks, maybe months," Richard said honestly. "But the cease and desist will go out today. That'll at least put him on notice. Weeks or months. Meanwhile, strangers would be staying in my cottage, using my property, sleeping in the bed where Thomas and I used to watch the stars through the skylight. I thanked Richard and left his office, but I knew legal action alone wasn't enough. I needed to see the full picture of what Derek had done. That evening, I did something I never thought I'd do. I created a fake email account and searched for Derek's Airbnb listing, and there it was, Pine Valley Lakefront Retreat. The photos showed my cottage, but it didn't look like my cottage anymore. Everything was staged, styled, made to look like a luxury rental. The description read, "Escape to this stunning lakefront cottage, perfect for couples or small families, modern amenities, breathtaking views, peaceful surroundings. Hosted by Derek Morrison, Superhost." Superhost. He'd been doing this long enough to earn badges. I scrolled through the reviews. There were dozens of them. "Amazing place. Derek was a great host. Perfect weekend getaway. Highly recommend." Beautiful cottage, exactly as described. The earliest review was dated 4 months ago. 4 months. He'd been running this Airbnb out of my cottage for 4 months, and I had no idea. All those weekends I hadn't been able to visit because of my hip surgery recovery. He'd been using that time to establish his business on my property. I felt sick, but I kept investigating. I found his website, Derek Morrison Properties, Luxury Short-Term Rentals. My cottage was listed prominently. But what caught my eye was a section labeled Coming Soon, with photos of other properties. Properties I didn't recognize. It seemed Derek had bigger ambitions. My cottage was just the beginning of his rental empire. I printed everything, every screenshot, every review, every rate sheet. I documented all of it. Then I started formulating my plan. The cease and desist letter would arrive at Derek's apartment by Wednesday. He'd probably ignore it at first, thinking I was bluffing. But I needed to make sure that when the truth came out, the impact would be devastating. That's when I remembered something important. About 6 years ago, just before Thomas got sick, he had the entire cottage renovated. We'd added a new heating system, fixed the foundation, replaced the roof. And as part of that renovation, Thomas, always the engineer, always thinking ahead, had installed something unusual: a comprehensive security system. Not just cameras, but sensors, and a control hub in the utility closet that could monitor everything happening in and around the cottage. We'd barely used it. After Thomas passed, I never even thought about it. But it was still there, still functional, and if I could access it, I could see everything Derek was doing. The next day, I drove back to the cottage. This time, I used the new key the locksmith had made for me. I went straight to the utility closet, opened the panel, and sure enough, the security system was still active. But there was something else, something even better. The system had been recording, for months. Every guest, every interaction, every moment, all captured on video and stored on a hard drive. I spent hours that night transferring files to my laptop, guest after guest, booking after booking, Derek showing people around, Derek collecting cash payments, Derek pocketing money that should have been mine. But then I found something even more incriminating. A video from 3 months ago. Derek was showing the cottage to Emily and Mark, and I could hear their conversation clearly. "This is perfect," Emily was saying. "How much have you made so far?" "About 18,000, Derek replied with a grin. "And that's just the beginning." "What about Mom?" Mark asked. "What if she finds out?" Derek laughed. "She won't. She barely comes up here anymore, and even if she does, by the time she figures it out and gets a lawyer involved, I'll have made enough money to make it worth the hassle." "You're sure the power of attorney documents will hold up?" Emily asked nervously. "Mom, I told you I had a guy create them. They look totally legit." "If Grandma challenges them, it'll take months to prove they're fake. And in the meantime, I keep operating. If Grandma challenges them, it'll take months to prove they're fake." There it was. Proof that the documents were forged. Proof that Emily knew. Proof that they had planned this together. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. I had everything I needed. But I wasn't going to just run to the police. No. Derek wanted to play the game of deception and betrayal? Fine. I would play too. But when I was done, he wouldn't just lose the cottage. He'd lose everything. I spent the next week preparing. The cease and desist letter from Richard had been delivered, and as expected, Derek ignored it. He sent a dismissive email claiming he had every legal right to operate the Airbnb and that I should stop harassing him. Perfect. Let him feel confident. Let him think he had gotten away with it. Meanwhile, I was building my case, brick by brick. I reached out to my accountant, Susan, and asked her to help me analyze Derek's business. Using the information from his website and Airbnb profile, Susan estimated that Derek had made approximately $65,000 in rental income over the past 4 months. $65,000 from my property, and he'd never given me a single cent. Susan helped me compile a detailed financial report showing every booking, every payment, every fee Derek had collected. She also noted that Derek had been reporting this income on his personal tax returns, claiming my cottage as his business property. Tax fraud. That was another charge to add to the list. Next, I contacted the county zoning office. Turns out, my cottage was zoned for residential use only. Short-term rentals like Airbnb were prohibited without special permits, permits that Derek had never obtained. I filed a formal complaint with the county. They informed me that they'd be sending an inspector within 2 weeks. Any violations could result in heavy fines and a cease operation order. But the most satisfying part of my plan? That was still to come. I created a new email address that looked official. Email protected. Then I sent Derek a message. Dear Mr. Morrison, this is Amanda Chen from the Airbnb Trust and Safety Team. We've received a complaint regarding your listing at Pine Valley Lakefront Retreat. The complaint alleges that you do not have proper authorization from the property owner to operate this rental. As per our policies, we require verification of property ownership or a notarized letter of authorization from the owner within 72 hours. Failure to provide this documentation will result in immediate suspension of your listing and withholding of all pending payouts. Please respond with the required documentation at your earliest convenience. Best regards, Amanda Chen Trust and Safety Team, Airbnb. I sent the email late Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, Derek had responded. His email was panicked, rambling. He claimed he did have authorization, that this was a family property arrangement, and that the complaint must be from someone trying to sabotage his business. I responded, staying in character. Mr. Morrison, we appreciate your response. However, we still require formal documentation. Please provide one of the following within 48 hours. 1. Property deed with your name listed as owner. 2. Notarized letter of authorization from Margaret, last name, the legal owner. 3. Valid power of attorney documents. Without this verification, we cannot allow your listing to remain active. Derek responded within an hour, and I could practically feel his desperation through the screen. He claimed he would get the documents sorted out and begged for an extension. I didn't give him one. Instead, I sent a final email. Mr. Morrison, due to the serious nature of this complaint and your inability to provide proper documentation, your listing has been suspended effective immediately. All pending payouts, totaling $8,400, have been frozen pending resolution of this matter. You may appeal this decision by providing the required documentation to our legal team. I then logged into Derek's actual Airbnb account. I'd figured out his password from watching him type it on one of the security videos and canceled all his upcoming bookings. Every single one. 3 months' worth of reservations. Gone. I also sent personalized messages to each guest who had a booking, explaining that due to unforeseen legal complications with the property, their reservations were being canceled and they'd receive full refunds. Then I changed his account password so he couldn't log back in. My phone rang 20 minutes later. It was Derek, absolutely losing his mind. "What did you do?" he screamed. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Derek," I said calmly. "My Airbnb account. All my bookings are canceled." "They're saying there's a legal issue with the property." "Well, there is a legal issue, Derek. You stole my cottage." "I didn't steal anything. I have power of attorney." "Then I'm sure you'll have no problem proving that to Airbnb, or to the police, or to the county zoning board that's investigating your illegal short-term rental operation." There was silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "What are you talking about?" "Derek, did you really think I'd just let you get away with this? I have security footage of everything. I have recordings of you admitting the documents are fake. I have financial records showing you've stolen $65,000 from me. And I have a lawyer who's very eager to file criminal charges." More silence. "But here's what I'm going to do," I continued. "I'm going to give you one chance. One chance to make this right. You have 24 hours to return every key to my cottage, remove all your belongings, restore everything to exactly the way it was, and transfer every single dollar you've made from my property into my bank account, all $65,000. I don't have $65,000, he protested. Then you'd better figure it out, because if you don't comply, I'm going to the police tomorrow morning. And Derek? Fraud, forgery, theft, tax evasion. You're looking at serious prison time. You wouldn't do that to your own grandson. You stole from your own grandmother, I said coldly. Don't lecture me about family. I hung up. For the first time in weeks, I felt powerful, in control, ready to take back what was mine. Derek didn't respond for 6 hours. During that time, I received 3 phone calls, one from Emily, one from Mark, and one from Derek's girlfriend Brittany, all begging me to be reasonable and not destroy Derek's life over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That's what they were calling fraud and theft now. I didn't take any of the calls. I'd said what I needed to say. The ball was in Derek's court. Finally, at around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Can we meet at the cottage tomorrow morning? I want to talk face to face. I stared at the message for a long moment. Part of me was suspicious. What if this was some kind of trap? But another part of me wanted to look Derek in the eye when this all came crashing down. I responded, 10 a.m., don't be late. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about everything that had happened, everything that had been said. I thought about the little boy Derek used to be, the one who would run into my arms and call me Grandma Maggie. I thought about how proud I'd been when he graduated high school, even though I knew Emily and Mark had paid off his teachers to boost his grades. Where had it all gone wrong? When had he become this person who could look at his own grandmother and see only an opportunity to exploit? The next morning, I arrived at the cottage at 9:30. I wanted to be there first, to be in control of the situation. I walked through the space slowly, looking at everything Derek had changed. This used to be a home. Now it was just empty, soulless. Derek arrived exactly at 10. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, wearing the same clothes from the day before. Good. He walked in without knocking, and we stood there in the living room facing each other like two opponents in a boxing ring. Okay, he said, his voice hoarse. You win. I'll give you back the cottage. And the money? He laughed bitterly. Grandma, I told you I don't have $65,000 just sitting around. Most of that money went into furniture, decorations, advertising, website development, paying a cleaning crew. So you spent my money to build your business? I interrupted. I was investing it, he shot back. I was building something, and you were going to benefit from it too. I never asked for any of this, Derek. You stole from me. I was trying to help you. His voice was rising now. You're sitting on this valuable property doing nothing with it. Do you know how much equity you have here? How much potential income you're wasting? It's not about money, I shouted back, my own anger finally breaking through. It's about respect. It's about this being my home, my choice, my life. You don't get to decide what's valuable to me. You're being sentimental over a building. This building is where I fell in love. This is where your grandfather proposed to me. This is where we spent our happiest moments. Every corner of this place has a memory, a piece of my heart, and you just erased all of it. Like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. Derek's face softened slightly. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something that looked like remorse. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said quietly. But you did. And worse than that, you involved your mother. You made her an accomplice. You forged documents. You committed crimes, Derek. Real crimes. He sat down on the couch, his head in his hands. What do you want me to do, Grandma? You want me to go to prison? Is that what this is about? I want you to understand what you've done, I said, sitting across from him. I want you to feel the weight of your choices, because, Derek, this isn't just about a cottage or money. This is about who you are as a person. He looked up at me, and I could see tears in his eyes. I know I messed up, I know that. But please, Grandma, please don't press charges. I'll do whatever you want. I'll pay you back every cent. It might take years, but I'll do it. Just, please don't destroy my life over this. I sat there looking at my grandson, and I felt something I didn't expect. Pity. Not for what he'd done, but for who he'd become. This scared, desperate young man who thought success meant taking from others, who thought value was only measured in dollars. Here's what's going to happen, I said slowly. You're going to restore this cottage to exactly the way it was. Every photo, every decoration, every piece of furniture, you're going to bring it all back. You're going to sign a legal document admitting what you did and agreeing to pay restitution. And you're going to work for that money, Derek. Real work. Not some get-rich-quick scheme. How am I supposed to pay you back if I'm working a normal job? He asked. Maybe you'll learn what your grandfather and I learned, that things earned through hard work and sacrifice mean more than things stolen or handed to you. He nodded slowly. And you won't press charges? I thought about it for a long moment. That depends on you. If you follow through, if you show me real change, real accountability, then no, I won't press charges. But Derek, if you ever try something like this again, if you ever disrespect me or take advantage of me or anyone else in this family, I will make sure you face the full consequences. Do you understand? Yes, he whispered. I understand. And your mother? I asked. What was her role in all this? Derek hesitated. She didn't know everything. I told her I had your permission. She believed me. I didn't believe that for a second. I'd seen the security footage. But I let it go for now. Emily was another conversation, another reckoning. You have 2 weeks, I said, standing up. 2 weeks to restore everything and provide me with a plan for repayment. If you need help finding work, I can make some calls. I still have connections from my teaching days. You'd help me? After everything? I'm disappointed in you, Derek. I'm hurt and angry. But you're still my grandson, and I still believe, or at least I want to believe, that you can be better than this. The next 2 weeks were intense. Derek, to his credit, did exactly what I asked. He started bringing back furniture, my grandmother's quilt, my photo albums, my books. Piece by piece, the cottage started feeling like home again. I didn't make it easy for him. Every item had to be placed exactly where it had been before. Every change had to be undone. And I watched him work, making sure he understood the significance of every single thing he'd removed. This photo, I said one afternoon, holding up a frame with Thomas and me on our 25th anniversary, was taken right on that porch. See the sunset in the background? Thomas and I sat there for hours that night, just talking about our life together. And you put it in a storage unit. Derek couldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Grandma. Sorry isn't enough, Derek. Sorry is just a word. I need you to understand what you took from me. By the end of the first week, Emily finally showed up. She arrived while Derek was installing the old curtains back on the windows. Mom, she said quietly, standing in the doorway. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, waiting. I'm sorry, she continued. I should have checked. I should have asked more questions. You knew, Emily, I said simply. I saw the video footage. You knew the documents were fake. You were part of this. Her face went pale. I didn't think, you didn't think I'd find out? Or you didn't think it mattered? She started crying. I thought I was helping Derek. He's been struggling so much, and Mark and I have tried to guide him, but nothing ever works out. This seemed like such a good opportunity, and I just wanted him to succeed. At my expense, I said. I know, and I'm so sorry. Mom, please forgive me, please. I looked at my daughter, my only child. and I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Anger, betrayal, but also love. She was still my daughter. Emily, I will forgive you. Eventually. But things between us have changed. You chose your son over your mother. You chose money over respect. And that's something you're going to have to live with. What can I do to make it right? Be a better parent, I said firmly. Stop enabling Derek. Stop giving him everything without making him work for it. Stop teaching him that the world owes him something, because it doesn't. And if you keep raising him that way, he's going to end up in a place much worse than this. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Okay, I will. After she left, Derek and I sat on the porch, the same porch where Thomas had proposed 45 years ago. I found a job, Derek said suddenly. Oh, yeah. It's at a property management company. Ironic, I know, but it's legitimate. I'll be learning the business the right way. From the ground up. Maintenance, customer service, all of it. The pay isn't great, but it's honest work. I'm proud of you for that, I said, and I meant it. I worked out a payment plan, he continued, pulling out a document from his folder. Based on my new salary, I can pay you $500 a month. It'll take about 10 years to pay off the full $65,000, but I'll do it. Every month. I promise. I looked at the document. It was detailed, realistic, thought out. I'll accept this, I said, on one condition. What's that? That you come visit me once a month. Not here at the cottage, this is my sanctuary, but at my house in the city. We'll have dinner, talk, rebuild what you broke. Because, Derek, I don't just want your money. I want my grandson back. His voice cracked. I want that too, Grandma. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun set over the lake. The same sunset Thomas and I had watched so many times. The same view that had made this place so special. You know what the saddest part of all this is? I said quietly. What? If you had just asked me, if you had come to me with respect and honesty, I might have actually helped you. Not with this cottage. Never with this. But maybe I could have co-signed a loan, or given you advice, or connected you with people who could have mentored you. But you didn't ask. You just took. And in doing that, you didn't just steal a cottage, Derek. You stole trust. And trust is so much harder to rebuild than a bank account. Derek didn't respond. He just nodded, staring out at the water. 3 months later, the cottage was fully restored. Every item back in place. Every memory honored. And I could finally breathe again in my own home. Derek kept his promise. Every month, like clockwork, $500 appeared in my account. And every month he came to dinner. Sometimes Emily came too. Sometimes it was just us. The conversations were awkward at first. We had to learn how to be family again, but slowly, over time, things got better. I learned that Derek had actually started excelling at his new job. He'd gotten a promotion after 6 months, something he'd earned through hard work, not manipulation. He seemed different, more grounded, more humble. Emily and Mark enrolled in a financial literacy course for parents, learning how to teach Derek about money and responsibility instead of just giving him handouts. As for me, I spent more time at the cottage than ever, every weekend, every holiday. I would sit on that porch, coffee in hand, and think about everything that had happened. And sometimes, when the sunset was particularly beautiful, I'd talk to Thomas. You were right, I'd say, looking up at the sky. You always said that family was worth fighting for, even when they hurt us. You said that love meant holding people accountable, not letting them get away with things. I finally understand what you meant. A year has passed since the Airbnb incident, as I've come to call it, and as I sit here now reflecting on everything that happened, I realize that this story isn't really about a cottage at all. It's about boundaries. It's about respect. It's about the difference between helping someone and enabling them. And most importantly, it's about knowing your own worth. For years, I'd been the kind of grandmother, the kind of mother, who would always say yes, who would always accommodate, who would put everyone else's needs before my own, because that's what you do for family, right? But what Derek's betrayal taught me was that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's just permission for people to take advantage of you. I think about all the people out there who might be facing similar situations. Maybe it's not a cottage. Maybe it's money or time or emotional energy. Maybe it's adult children who keep coming back for more, always taking, never giving. Maybe it's family members who see your kindness as weakness. To those people, I want to say this. You have the right to protect what's yours. You have the right to say no. You have the right to demand respect, even from the people you love, especially from the people you love. Because real love, the kind that builds strong families and strong people, isn't about giving endlessly without expecting anything in return. Real love is about teaching people to stand on their own. It's about preparing them for a world that won't always hand them what they want. Derek learned that lesson the hard way. And you know what? He's better for it. Last month, he told me something that almost made me cry. We were having dinner at my house, and out of nowhere, he said, "Grandma, I need to tell you something. I'm grateful. For all of it. For you standing up to me. For not just letting me get away with it. Because if you had, I would have kept going. I would have gotten worse. And eventually I would have done something I couldn't come back from. You saved me from myself." That's when I realized the full impact of what had happened. This wasn't just about protecting my cottage. It was about protecting Derek from his own sense of entitlement, from his own worst instincts, from a life of shortcuts and consequences he wasn't prepared for. And Emily? She learned something too. She learned that being a good parent doesn't mean protecting your child from every consequence. It means preparing them to face consequences, to learn from mistakes, to grow into people of character and integrity. She's different now. More honest with Derek. More willing to let him struggle and figure things out. And their relationship is actually stronger for it. As for the cottage, it's exactly the way it should be. It's my sanctuary again, my place of peace, my connection to Thomas and to all the memories we built together. I still go there every weekend. I still sit on that porch and watch the sun set. And sometimes, I think about what could have happened if I'd just let Derek do what he wanted. I could have avoided the conflict. Avoided the confrontation. Avoided the hard conversations and the tears and the months of tension. But then what? I would have lost my cottage, yes. But worse than that, I would have lost my self-respect. I would have taught Derek that he could take whatever he wanted from people without consequence. I would have taught Emily that enabling bad behavior is the same as supporting it. And I would have spent the rest of my life resentful, bitter, feeling like a victim. Instead, I chose to fight. I chose to stand up for what was mine. I chose to demand accountability. And in doing so, I taught everyone in my family, including myself, what it means to have dignity and boundaries. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Would I do it again? Without hesitation. Because at the end of the day, the cottage isn't just a piece of property. It's a symbol of the life Thomas and I built together through hard work, sacrifice, and love. It's a testament to the idea that the things we earn have more value than the things we're given. And that's a lesson Derek finally understands. These days, he talks about saving up for his own property someday. Not to turn into an Airbnb empire, but to build his own memories, his own life, his own legacy. And when that day comes, I'll be proud of him. Not because he's successful, but because he learned that success built on someone else's foundation is no success at all. So if you're reading this, or listening to this, and you recognize yourself in my story, whether you're the Margaret being taken advantage of or the Derek doing the taking, I want to leave you with this. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to do the right thing. It's never too late to rebuild trust, restore relationships, and become the person you're meant to be. But it starts with accountability. It starts with honesty. And it starts with the courage to face the consequences of your actions even when it's hard. That's what Derek did. And that's what saved our family. My cottage is still standing by the lake, beautiful as ever. The memories are intact. The love is still there. And every time I drive up that long driveway and see it waiting for me, I'm reminded of what I fought for, what I protected, and what I'll never let anyone take from me again. Because some things are worth fighting for. And I am one of them.